Hello viewers, in today's video we will have an understanding of the steps of research process in social work. As research is a systematic process, each step has to be carried out in sequence which makes the research scientific. So let us move on to the first step towards the research process. So the first step in the research process is problem identification. So the problem identification and this problem area which has to be studied, that has to be identified. So in social work we usually try to study social phenomena which hampers human development or prove to be oppressive to a specific group. The aim is always to find solution to the existing conditions like deprivation, marginality and poverty. Therefore, it becomes very important to choose a problem in a society and find solutions for it. Now, problem identification also involves few steps and some basic considerations before it is finalized. The first step in the problem identification is defining the problem. So, defining problem means move towards narrowing down of the problem. We may like to carry out our study in a particular area like drug addiction, juvenile delinquency, HIV, AIDS, illiteracy, etc. These are broad areas which we need to narrow down to more specific statements. So the second step is making specific statements which can be in the form of specific questions which has to be answered or workable solutions sought. Statements in light of theoretical framework of previous research in that particular area is to be made. Here, a review of literature plays an important part in this task. Another very important task in problem formulation is specifying the meaning of each variable in context to the scope of the particular area. It is also very important to identify the significance of a particular research, which means that whether the findings would contribute to the knowledge base and up to what extent. If already such studies have been carried out in the past, then there is no significance of doing it again. Once the above stated aspects have been covered, other considerations also have to be looked into, like financial feasibility, time availability, resources present, etc. So the next step in the research process is the review of literature. So it is a very significant step in the research process. Review of literature provides the background for the problem formulation as well as development of the hypothesis. It also helps the researcher to understand the perspective and viewpoints of other researchers and their findings. The researcher through literature review can also identify the gaps in previous research undertaken. Based on the review of literature, the researcher formulates the hypothesis or assumptions. In the present era, there are several types of resources available from where a researcher can review literature. For instance, books are the most traditional form of source of literature. These can provide a strong theoretical base for the topic of the research. Another very important source is journals and periodicals. Journals have research articles which provide significant information about research methodologies applied and findings of other researchers. Research findings undertaken by many institutions are published in the form of reports which can be accessed for literature review. E-resources are the most vast resource having a plethora of literature. One can sit at one place and access the literature on a global level. Databases like JSTOR, etc. are very commonly used e-resources by researchers. One very important aspect of literature review is the citation of the literature as per approved referencing style, and there are various referencing style like APA, that is American Psychological Association referencing style, Chicago style, etc. So these are citation is also very important when we are discussing literature review as a step in the research process. Another step in the research process is the formulation of hypothesis. So once we have done the review of literature, now the hypothesis has to be formulated. So hypothesis gives the direction to the research. It is an assumption made based on the theoretical framework of the study. Though not required for all types of research, it is usually an important step in the research process. The hypothesis can be in several forms, like if-then predictions or just a declarative statement. The hypothesis has to be tested through statistical tools, and in order to test the hypothesis, a null hypothesis, say H0, is formulated, which nullifies the research hypothesis, that is H1. After the data analysis, the research hypothesis is either accepted or rejected. It is to be noted over here that hypothesis formulation is not required in exploratory studies. So, what is research hypothesis? Research hypotheses are if-then predictions or declarative statement. It is often classified as alternative, directional or non-directional. For example, economic empowerment of women leads to reduction in violence against women. So this is a declarative statement or a hypothesis. Now this has to be tested through observations. The research process or research hypothesis. So economic empowerment of women has no impact on violence against women. So here variable is very important, and in the above example, two variables have been taken into consideration. So we have to take two variables, and we are studying two-variable relationship between these two variables, that is economic empowerment of women and reduction in violence against women. So these are the two variables, and the relationship of these two has to be studied. So moving on to the next step in the research process is the selection of research design. So research design is the blueprint of the strategies and procedure to be applied for carrying out the research process. There are various types of research design, and the researcher has to apply any one as per the requirement and nature of the research study. Let us briefly discuss the various types of research design in social work. There are broadly three types of research design that is carried out in social work, that is exploratory study, descriptive study and causal or quasi-experimental research design. Exploratory research is carried out to discover or explore an already existing social phenomena. The process is to generate hypotheses for further studies and provide a background for the future research in this area. Some of the exploratory research are survey, case study, action research, etc. Another important type of research design is the descriptive research design. Its main purpose is to provide details about a particular phenomena, community or demography. It focuses on answering what rather than why. And the different types of descriptive research design is cross-sectional or longitudinal. Another third category of research design is the experimental, quasi-experimental or causal research, and this is a very widely used research design in social work. This research design aims to establish causal relationship between two variables. It is widely used in the evaluation of social intervention programs. Some of the examples of quasi-experimental research design are ex post facto, pre-test, post-test, or time series analysis. So these are some of the experimental research design. Now let us move on to the another step, that is the data collection. The process of when we have selected our research design, then we will select the data collection method. So the data collection method consists of three aspects mainly. One is the development of the tools for data collection. What will be the tools for data collection? The sample selection and collection of the data. So once the tools have been developed, we will go to the researcher goes to the field and then collects the data, and the population to which the data is administered, that is called the sample. So now let us understand what are the tools of data collection. So there are mainly two types of tools of data collection, that is the quantitative tools and qualitative tools. The quantitative tools are of several types, that is questionnaire and structured interviews. So these are mainly two types of quantitative techniques which are used to collect data. So the questionnaire are like yes no questions, and structured interview are like the answers are very structured and not very long answers are expected. So these are structured interviews and questionnaire. So quantitative data can be put to scale, and these are easily measurable by statistical tools. The qualitative tools are open-ended interviews, focus group discussion, observations and case study. So these are more qualitative tools which are used to study the sample, and here qualitative data is obtained which are analyzed thematically. So moving on to the next step is the sampling. So the sampling is very crucial when we are talking about the research process, and sampling is also of several types, and we choose one type depending on the requirement of a study. So sampling is basically of two types, that is probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So it is a very important step, sampling, and this has to be taken into consideration while we are choosing the population of the study. And sampling design is carried out on the universe or the population which has been chosen for the study. So these two types of sampling techniques are used, probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So probability sampling consists of simple random sampling, systematic random sampling, stratified random sampling and cluster sampling. Non-probability sampling consists of purposive sampling, convenience sampling, quota sampling and snowball sampling. So we will be discussing these the types of this sampling in subsequent videos. Here just has been presented. Now another step in the research process is the data analysis and generalizations. So the data, once we get the data, there are two types of data, quantitative data and qualitative data, depending upon the tools which we have applied. So the quantitative data is put to statistical analysis like mean, median, mode, standard deviation, correlation, etc. There are some software also available which analyzes the data very quickly without manual calculations. So like MS Excel, SPSS or Stata, these are some of this software used for quantitative data analysis. Another one is the qualitative data analysis. For this, mainly thematical analysis is done. These days many softwares are also available for qualitative data like NVivo or Atlas. So the thematic data can be put to these softwares and it is analyzed very quickly. Now another factor when we are considering data analysis is the testing of the hypothesis. So after we have analyzed the data, the hypothesis is either accepted or rejected based on the findings. During the analysis, the error or significance of error, these have to be considered, and the error is of type 1 and type 2. So when we are considering the error, it is very important to keep into consideration the error which can occur due to several reasons. Chances of error in accepting or rejecting the hypothesis can occur. In social sciences, the propositions or the assumptions are taken as probabilities. They are not in absolute terms as in natural sciences. We do not study the whole population of a society, but we take only a representative sample to test the hypothesis. For example, economic empowerment of women leads to a reduction in domestic violence. So the null hypothesis would be the null hypothesis can be true or false, means there is a probability that economically empowered women may face violence. The causes can be many. Based on the statistical findings, if the researcher rejects the research hypothesis when in reality it is actually true, then it is called as type 1 error. If the researcher accepts the null hypothesis when in reality it is false, then it is type 2 error. When doing the analysis, significance of error is also taken into consideration. Whether type 1 or type 2, the error is taken into consideration. So significance of error means if there is a certain percentage like 95% significance, that means that 5% chances of error is there. After the analysis has been done, finally generalizations and conclusions are made based on the findings of the study. So these are some of the steps of the research process. It's clear to you and you have liked the video. Thank you for watching.